Which is more maddening? The one becoming aware of their insanity, or the one living inside the insanity, believing it to be reality? I want you to sit with that for a moment, because most people hear the word insane and immediately picture someone else, someone unstable, someone disconnected, someone who has lost touch, someone who needs help, medication, treatment, therapy. I think I think that was quite fitting for the topic. Anyways, but rarely do we ask a far more uncomfortable question. How do you know you're sane? Seriously, what is sanity? Most people never define it. They inherit it. Someone acts normally, someone acts strangely, someone appears off, someone hears voices, someone sees patterns, someone behaves in ways the collective cannot understand. And almost immediately, society makes a judgment: sane, insane, stable, unstable. But who decides the scale? Who decided what reality should look like? And why do so many of us trust that scale without ever questioning who built it? Sanity seems learned, which makes sanity far more interesting than we often admit. Because if sanity is learned, then sanity is not merely an individual experience, it is collective, a group agreement, a system protecting itself through a shared perception. And perhaps that is why people cling to sanity so fiercely, not as individuals, but as participants belonging to something greater than themselves. And here's something interesting: to dream of a future requires delusion. Every successful person you've ever admired believed in something that did not exist yet. An artist hears a song no one else can hear. An entrepreneur believes in a company that doesn't exist. An athlete imagines victories years before they happen. We celebrate this. We call it vision. We call it faith, ambition, manifestation. Yet move too far from the collective agreement, and something changes. Suddenly, the language changes. Vision becomes delusion. Faith becomes instability. Imagination becomes madness. Interesting. Because society does not reject delusion, it negotiates with it. Certain delusions are rewarded, others are pathologized. which raises an uncomfortable question. When does imagination become madness, and who decides? Perhaps madness is not broken thinking. Perhaps madness is intense information with nowhere to go, knowledge without containment, awareness without structure. Imagine this: take every thought you've ever had since the day you were born, every memory, every dream, every nightmare, every subconscious process, every fear, every fantasy, every daydream, every contradiction, every conversations you've replayed in your head, every version of yourself. Now place all of that inside a box. Visualize it. How large would that box be? How chaotic would it appear? Now apply all their sounds at once. Allow every thought to speak simultaneously. Every memory, every regret, every desire, every fear, everything. Now imagining listening to all of that as one song. Could you? Or would it sound like madness? Perhaps the mind has always been chaotic. Life simply packages chaos into moments. Time slows it down. Perspective narrows it. Consciousness filters it. Without these filters, perhaps none of us would appear sane, would we? Why do we assume that someone experiencing insanity cannot simultaneously be in something far more real? Why do we assume insight and instability are mutually exclusive? Humans romanticize perception constantly. We say, trust your intuition, follow your heart, listen to your inner voice. Yet, when someone's internal experience diverges too far from consensus, we become uncomfortable. Why? Because consensus feels safe. Consensus creates stability. It protects reality. But truth has never depended entirely upon agreement. History is filled with people dismissed, ridiculed, diagnosed, excluded, executed, only to later be understood differently, only to be later studied. This isn't to romanticize suffering or deny the reality of mental illness. It's simply to ask, why are we so certain that our version of reality is the correct one? And if certainty itself can be learned, inherited, and reinforced, then perhaps certainty deserves scrutiny as well. Perhaps the person, aware that their perception may be unstable, is already doing something profound, questioning themselves. Meanwhile, many move through life never questioning their reality at all, never doubting, never examining, never asking, what if I'm wrong? Which is more maddening, the one questioning their reality or the one who never does? Why are we afraid of madness? Are we afraid of losing reality? Or are we afraid of losing certainty? Are we afraid of crossing a point of no return? Or are we clinging to the warmth of the dream, the identity, the script, the certainty, the light, as many say? Because certainty is comforting. Questions are not. Perhaps that is why people defend sanity so passionately. Because sanity may not simply be health. Perhaps sanity is protection. Protection from chaos. Protection from uncertainty. Protection from the possibility that reality is stranger than we would like to admit. And maybe that's what unsettles us the most. Not madness, but the suspicion that madness and sanity may not be opposites at all, only different relationships to chaos. And I comfortably know I'm crazy. And saying that doesn't frighten me at all. In fact, the older I get, the less insulting it feels, and the more animalistic my spirit feels in that knowing. Because the moment someone calls me crazy, I find myself smiling to the thought of you recognizing my madness as confirmation, and you recognizing your need to call it madness as confirmation of yours. Neither one escapes the mirror, which makes the whole thing almost humorous, doesn't it? Because if everything is reflection, then your agreement adds to the madness. Your disagreement adds to it too. And me laughing to that realization certainly doesn't help my case. Now, does it? Interesting. Sanity seems to be trained or conditioned, rehearsed, something learned so thoroughly that we eventually call it nature, as though the mind itself underwent domestication. Sit still, speak appropriately, react proportionately, don't think too much, don't feel too much, do not imagine too much, don't question too much, contain yourself. Interesting phrase, contain yourself, as if something inside us is always threatening to spill over. And perhaps that's exactly what sanity is: containment, not of not of truth, not of reality, but of intensity. Because madness has a peculiar habit of slipping through gaps. It appears in betrayal, in grief, in trauma, in drugs, in heartbreak, in obsession, mental health, in spiritual awakening, even in laughter, especially laughter. Have you ever noticed how often deep realization is immediately followed by laughter? Almost manic laughter. The kind that arrives when someone becomes so absurdly obvious that language collapses beneath it. You see the pattern, you watch it unfold in real time, and suddenly you're grinning to yourself like a maniac while everyone else continues as normal, as if you momentarily stepped outside the script and forgot how to return. Perhaps awakening and madness have always lived closer than we like to admit. After all, both involve seeing differently, both involve thresholds, both alter perception. The difference may not be perception itself, because sanity, when observed closely, seems surprisingly fragile, handled with care, maintained through routine, protected by certainty, stabilized by repetition, a psychological agreement, constantly negotiating with chaos, cause and effect, thought and reaction, order and collapse. Which makes me wonder, is sanity truly our natural state? Or is sanity simply the performance that keeps the vessel intact? Because compulsions fascinate me. The compulsive thinker, the compulsive believer, doubter, lover, perfectionist, seeker, liar. Everyone appears driven by something, pulled, moved, possessed almost. Perhaps madness is compulsive, but then again, so is sanity. Maybe sanity is simply the socially rewarded compulsion. Interesting. Because if we are expressions of God, as God, then another possibility emerges. Could sanity be perfectionism on a cosmic scale? Consciousness attempting to organize itself, correct itself, refine itself, hold itself together, be in control. Perhaps what we call sanity is God not trying to fall apart, trying to remain coherent while carrying infinity, trying to maintain a stable identity while simultaneously being everything. And perhaps that is why madness unsettles us, because somewhere deep down we suspect that chaos was never the exception, it was the foundation. Order simply arrived later, a beautiful agreement, a temporary one, which leaves me with a final question. If sanity must constantly defend itself, reinforce itself, and rehearse itself, was it ever stable to begin with? And what the fuck are we actually protecting? reality, or the agreement.